This presentation is going to be called Fake It Till You Make It. It's about a microlibrary, a JavaScript microlibrary called Pretender, which is a mock server library. I am Heather Brysiewicz. I'm one of the co-organizers of the San Diego JavaScript group. I am now an Ember.js and JavaScript consultant in the greater San Diego area and also abroad. I moved here from Chicago about 8 months ago. I'm loving it. My Twitter handle is right there and my website. I have all of the slides posted on my GitHub, so feel free to check them out afterwards. They have links to everything and all the example docs in there, so you can go and check them out. So, Pretender. Pretender is a microlibrary made by Track. It allows you to create fake server endpoints. It is built upon a couple other microlibraries that provide some of the other functionality. Having the ability to make fake server endpoints allows you to rapidly prototype so that you don't have to worry about a server if you want to build out examples for presentation or just put an app together and show it off to someone and get buy-in. It also allows for you to do client-side development as a front-end developer in parallel to your server-side developers creating the back-end. This is kind of out of focus. There you go. All right, so this is all on the client side. You don't need a server at all. On the client side, you're going to create some fixtures to get it to work. If anyone's worked with some of the other model libraries on client side, they can work with fixture data. The cool thing about Pretender is that you create fixture data for this fake server. So when you're ready for a real server, you don't have to switch a model adapter or switch any of your client side code to get it to work with the server. Everything will stay the exact same in your client-side code. You literally just replace it. So the mock server is going to use your fixture code. And you're going to be able to define some endpoints. This is where you initialize the Pretender. It's very similar to Express in Node, I think, if you've ever worked with Express. It uses a server DSL, so you can do .get, .post, .put, all of the ones that you would normally use. And you basically decide what to do with the fixture data and how to return it. It's able to handle all the different response codes, all the different headers that you might need to set. Basically, you just format it exactly how you need it to be while you're waiting for your server. So one of the microlibraries that this is built on in order to make this possible is called FakeHR. I'm going to abbreviate it because it's a handful. This overrides the native XHR object so that it mimics its behavior without ever actually hitting a URL. So it's intercepting the request to the server. A little bit about XHR. Not a lot of you probably remember back in the days before jQuery, but this is how you used to do Ajax back in the day. I remember this. So this is an object that allows you to interact with a server without page refresh. What you're more familiar with, so basically you would wait for the ready state to change, meant that you got a response from the server. Then you would figure out what the code was, the response code was, and do whatever you needed to do with the data that you got back. What you're probably more familiar with is something like this, which is jQuery. So jQuery uses a jQuery XHR object, which basically wraps the XHR, but it actually limits the XHR object, so it doesn't have the full functionality of an XHR object. So the data types that it has is a little bit limited, and it only does HTTP requests. XHR objects use file and FTP protocols as well. The third microlibrary, or the second one it's built on, is made by Tilde.io. They're also a large contributor to Ember.js. It's called RouteRecognizer. Basically, it's just a really tiny router. It allows you to register different paths to different handlers. So Pretender utilizes this, obviously. It's going to register all the handlers that you define with the endpoints that you've set up. So each verb request, put, post, delete, each gets its own instance of one of these routers. Since you could have, get posts, put posts. So each one gets a different router instance. So here's an example. This is code from Pretender's source code. So it's initializing a new router for each of these verbs. And then here you see that it's actually registering the path and the handler. And this is Pretender code, but interacting with the RouteRecognizer microlibrary. All right, so here's some example code. Try to make it cute with puppies and kitties. Keep it interesting. So here's a basic example. This is just the index endpoint. So over here you see you've got all of them listed out, cats, dogs, nothing too fancy. Create. Oh, create is on this one. Okay, well, here's some fixture data. So one of these objects has ID, type, name, age, source. You can make the fixture data be whatever you want, obviously. They're all indexed by the string ID. This just makes it easier within Pretender for me to find a specific ID when you get an ID passed in as a parameter. You can organize your fixture data however you want. And then here, let's make this a little bigger, is where I'm actually creating Pretender, the Pretender instance. And I start with max ID of 4 just because I know that I have only 4 fixture items. So when I create, I'm going to increment that. So here's the index. I take all of the animals and I map them to get just the objects in an array, since I have them in this format. And so the way that I'm formatting the responses here is all formatted for Ember data. So this application is written in Ember. It's probably actually a really good starter app too. And like I said, all this code is going to be is up in the slides on my GitHub. So if you want to ever check it out, it's a really simple Ember application to get you started, and it's using a fake server. So you can pretty much mess with it and give it a try and see if you like Ember if you haven't used it yet. And then Ember data expects the root for index to be animals and then animal for a single one. So I'm stringifying the results, giving a 200 response and passing it back. And then here's my get for a specific one. Similar, I'm just looking it up by ID. This makes it really easy. That's why I have the data formatted that way, for me to just look it up and pass it back with the root. And then I have post for create in this example. This is going to parse the request body, which is basically the entire animal minus the ID. And, oh, this example is bad code. This is one of the revisions in between, apparently. So, let's see if I have it open. I don't. Oh. All right, well, this is one of the revisions in between. But basically what you would do here is you would assign an ID based on max ID. You would increment it, give the animal an ID, and save animal sub-animal ID to be this object that you just received, and then send back the response, the stringified JSON, which that code's missing. But I'll update it and post it back up to my GitHub. And then this is the Ember application. I'm not going to get too crazy into this, but just to give you guys an idea if you haven't worked with Ember before, I have the cats route, and this will be easy to open up with this to see. So this is just instantiating the application. App.store is where we keep all of our data. I have the cats route, the dogs route, and the create route. As you can see up here, all is the index route. This is one of my models. This is the animal. They're all animals. They just have a different type, name, age, source. I think in the later example I added gender. And then in the index route, I'm going to grab all the animals from my store. This right here is actually hitting the fake server endpoints and returning the fixture data, which is why we see the fixture data here. It's going to match what I had up above. The create route is going to, for its model, let me make this bigger. The create route is going to actually create a record to work with. So when you go and hit create, this is creating a record in your store so that when you make it, it saves it and adds it to your list. And here's the save action, submit. So it's just going to grab that model and save it, and then it's going to send you back to index, which is what I just did. we have the cats controller. So in this example, and I changed it in the bigger example, which is going to be next, but in this example, it's actually just grabbing all of the animals and filtering them by type. Later, I added query parameters to my fake server endpoints. So I can actually hit the store and pull back from the server, the fake server, the filtered results. So here's a better example. Here's all of our animals with pictures. You can click on them. You see this adorable picture of this adorable cat. You can go in here and update it, change its name. And this is all working with fake data. So if I were to like rerun this JS bin, it would go back to the fixture data. Nothing's actually being saved. But it allows you to like build out an entire client-side application without having any server-side yet, which is really cool. If I hit cats, it's only going to show me the cats. If I hit dog, it's only going to show me the dogs. This is actually my dog right there. She's adorable. If you want to create one, we can. Snickers. And pig has me up here. Alright, so now she should be at the bottom. There she is. There she is. Cute. Alright, so let's hide that for a minute. The fixture data hasn't changed, except that I added my dog. Still got the max ID 4. Here in the index route, I added the query parameter logic. So on the request, you get something called query params. You also get params. Pretender provides you this. It actually comes straight from the router, but the Pretender library wraps the FakeHR and the router, so you really have no idea that they're any different. It's just Pretender if you're just using Pretender. So here I'm using the query parameters. I really only care about type in this example. You could probably make it more dynamic if you wanted to. Here I'm going to filter my objects that I have up above in my fixture data by type, and then I'm going to map them to return only the array of objects because I don't want them indexed by ID. Otherwise, I'm just going to do what I did before and provide all of the animals back. And then again, I'm going to stringify it in the format that Ember Data is expecting. Get animals. Here's an actual working example of get animals by ID. And again, this one's really simple. I'm just looking it up by ID. Post, here's the working create. I'm going to give it an ID, post it into memory, stringify it in the format that I need it to be, and respond. Here's the put. This is for an update. It does pretty much the same thing as post, except it doesn't give it an ID. And then we've got delete, which is just going to remove it from my fixture data in memory and just respond. So this is a little bit more complication on top of what we had before, or more complicated Ember application, but still very, very simple. Really easy to go through and read and understand how everything's working. Cats, dogs, create show. Show is, let me actually get the individual kitty cat. And these are just static. I use them for the select box dropdowns. Normally these would go in a controller or something. Because this was such a small app and so simple, I just put them up here. Index route hasn't changed. I'm going to grab all of the animals. Show route, I'm going to grab a specific animal by ID. When I go to the individual show, that's where I offer those options of edit and delete. So those have to be actions on my route. So we have remove and edit and save. So save happens after you've edited and you're ready to flip back to the view. So here for remove, I'm going to grab the actual animal, I'm going to delete it, I'm going to save it, and I'm going to send the user back to index. Edit, I'm using this Boolean flag, and this is a common pattern in Ember to switch in between what you're seeing. It's just basically toggling something so that you know you're in edit mode, so you're going to display the form instead of this. But it makes it really easy. So that way you're just checking this Boolean in the template. And if it's set, then show them the form. If it's not, then don't. Save, you're going to do similar to delete record, and you're going to grab the content, save it, and then you're going to unset is editing. Because the only way you're ever going to get to the save action is if you hit edit. So you're going to want to set that back to false, so it goes back. every time that you're doing save or delete, you're actually hitting that fake server. It's getting intercepted by the pretender code that you created. And then we have create route. So this is when you go to create a new animal. Deactivate is a handler on the Ember route object, and this is called every time you leave a route. So if a user goes into create, starts typing, and then leaves, I want it to clear out whatever they had typed so that when they go back, it's not there anymore. So it looks like they went there fresh. So if I go to create and I start typing and I leave, when I go back, it's fresh because they were cleared out when they left the route. Here's the submit on the create. I'm just grabbing all those fields and creating a new record, animal record, with that data, and I'm saving it and kicking them back to index. And then here's where I'm doing the query parameter call to the store, where I'm finding an animal of type cat and finding an animal of type dog, which is different than before where I was filtering on the actual all content. So when you're ready to migrate to a real server, the really cool thing about this over something like fixture data with your Ember data or whatever model library you're using is that you can either leave all the pretender code in there because maybe you're switching back and forward. Maybe you're testing out some of the server endpoints because the guy was like, oh, hey, I've got a couple of them. Or maybe you did some of them and you want to try them out. You can call server shutdown. It's going to put the native FakeHR object back on the window instead of intercepting it. And then you would actually be hitting those endpoints as you expect, and your client code shouldn't have to change at all. Otherwise, you can remove the pretender code completely, which is probably something you'd want to do for production. And that's it. Here's the slides, repo, my email, my Twitter, mine, website, and then the author of Pretender and Fake XML HTTP request is Trek. He's one of the core contributors for Ember.js. A lot of the code that he makes is really cool. A lot of it's microlibraries, so check him out. Thank you.